Hey guys, LearnMoreFast here. Okay, so we're going to go over yeast breads. This is lab number 3. Basically, all these videos are just quick overviews, just to give you a pretty good insight into what we're looking into. After that, we're going to go a little bit more deep into it, and you can look at that video afterwards. But basically, we're going to start going over yeast breads. Characteristics: texture, fine, thin walls, uniform grain. These are literally made from hand. Basically, these aren't your quick breads like we did in lab number 2. So just go over this, understand it, definitely know how to use this because this is the one you're going to be using in lab more. Uh, so we'll get started. Okay, so again, we went over these. Crumb, elastic, springs back when touched. So basically no crumb method. Know how to actually mix it in your bowl when you know it's elastic enough, basically, and when you know you've mixed enough. A couple other things is you need to know how to cut in. If you don't know already, check out my video. I'm trying to put this all together now, so definitely check that out. And yeah, I'll give you some more in a little bit. Proofing, you need to know what proofing is. That's basically the beginning when you first have your dough made and you let it out to sit the first time to let it rise. So you do not want it to set out too long. The cells will overexpand and collapse. If you leave it out too short of a time, there'll be wide cracks and a very compact texture, and you do not want that. You want fluffy bread. Okay, so now we're going to go into ingredients. Yeast, we need to know how it leavens. And these are the types of yeast: compressed yeast, active dry yeast, instant quick rising dry yeast, and too much yeast. So you do not want too much yeast. You can probably imagine what would happen there. You need to know how it leavens. Basically what it does is the yeast, when it activates, it acts like little, basically how Dr. Demetrius describes it is it acts like little people. Or like they become active literally, and they start like literally blowing air into the bread, and that's why you get all these little holes and dips and everything. Like if you look at a bread, like for example, just cut open maybe a bread package, and just look at the quality and texture of it. You'll see like little holes. It's just not like perfectly smooth. If you do have perfectly smooth and there's no little holes or anything in it, then more than likely there was no yeast used on it, and that's a great way to tell. More than likely in lab, you're going to be using active dry yeast just because it's easier and it's faster, and you're basically pressed for time. So that's something to look into. We have starter, basically is something you can use to replace the yeast. What are you looking for? Sponge-like ingredients. This is actually, well, I'll get to that a little later. I'm getting ahead of myself. We need to also know that when it comes to flour, for example, wheat flour, it does not have gluten. Okay, now you're gonna be like, oh no way. That's why we stay away from those products. Maybe it's wheat, maybe it's something else. But basically, what it is gluten is developed in the process of making the bread. That's why we can't touch it. Okay, so basically, what's happening is that same gluten quality. It literally by mixing it in, the stickier that dough gets, the more gluten we have. So when the flour mixes with the yeast and the other ingredients, that's when the gluten occurs. And so the more you mix and mix and mix, the greater the gluten. Or actually, yeah, I'm sorry. And there's your expansion of gluten. Liquid, basically for hydration, gelatinization, and for dissolving your ingredients. Sugar, food is a food for yeast. This is actually what helps activate that. Besides some types of yeast where you have to soak it in water, if you have like a dry yeast or a yeast that you just toss into the mixture, the sugar actually helps the yeast. It grows even more. It also helps with flavor, texture, and browning, and that's your sugar. Fat keeps your quality, handling, volume, and tenderness. That's just basic. Salt, flavor, yeast fermentation, effect on gluten, etc. Mixing and handling, straight dough method. These are definitely methods you need to know. You're going to be using a lot of it. Straight dough method, liquid is warmed with sugar, salt, and softened fat. Instructions for scalded milk. A third of flour is blended with liquid ingredients. Rest of flour added. Da, da, da. Sponge method, sponge starter, add melted fat, salt, remainder flour. There are bread machines you can use. Kneading, basically, kneading is just straight. It's therapeutic. Kneading really is therapeutic. This is the most important step. Like you're gonna use kneading more than anything. So I suggest you definitely learn how to knead. Again, I'm going to try to put up a video regarding that soon. or in the future. We have fermentation occurs during rising period. You can have over fermentation. There's cold temperatures, hot temperatures, proofing, and your finalizing. You need to know that. There's also another one. Oh, here it is actually, oven spring. This is basically like your final proofing stage, and definitely Google that. You can. There's probably like a Wikipedia link. Just explore it yourself, and you'll understand it more. I can probably create a video later, but definitely try to understand what oven spring is. That'll be a question. Effective temperature increase, Maillard, yeah, okay, Maillard, grease pan, microwave, white bread. Okay, so basically all this you can just go over, just read through it. Staling, if you know what stale bread is, you have a pretty good idea. You can how to make it fresher. It's a leathery crust, loss of flavor, what increases staling. Spoilage, molding, rope, etc. What makes up a loaf of bread? You can read through this. Unless, actually, what I'll do, I'll just read through it now quickly. Give you a good idea what makes up a loaf of bread. So if you really don't feel like reading this, I'll just let you listen to it. Basic bread is made up of flour and liquid. Mixing flour and liquid makes unleavened bread. Adding a leavening agent which reacts with other ingredients to produce a gas causes the dough to rise. Yeast is used to leaven most kinds of bread. Baking powder and baking soda are used to leaven biscuits, muffins, and quick breads, and other ingredients for variation and flavor. Below is a list of ingredients and the role each play in making a loaf of bread. Flour. Flour gives bread structure. There are several different kinds of flour. Some of these include bread flour, cake flour, self-rising, whole wheat flour, and all-purpose flour. Bread flour works best for making bread because of its high gluten protein content. Bread flour comes from hard wheat, which is higher content and excellent gluten potential. Ta-da! Gluten is flour protein, and add gluten to recipes using low-protein flour such as rye or whole wheat to give them an added boost in the rising process. Yeast. Yeast makes bread rise. It's a live fungus that reacts with sugar to produce bubbles of carbon dioxide gas. Ta-da! That's exactly what we're looking for. There's your biological reactant. There's your yeast. So both are biological reactants, but carbon dioxide is what the answer she'll be looking for. This causes the dough to rise, giving it a light, airy texture. The three most common types of yeast are active dry, rapid rise, and bread machine yeast. Try to use fresh yeast. You can test the yeast for freshness by dissolving 1 teaspoon sugar in half cup warm water. Add 1/4 teaspoon yeast if the yeast is fresh. The mixture will be frothy and double in size. Store leftover yeast in an airtight container in the refrigerator. Fat. Fats add flavor and tenderness. Fats include butter, margarine, shortening, and vegetable oil. When a recipe calls for more than 2 tablespoons of butter cut into smaller pieces to make sure it blends well with other ingredients. Salt. Salt stabilizes the gluten in the dough and binds it. Salt also prevents the dough from over-rising. Excess salt produces a firm dough with a low volume. Too little salt produces flowing, sticky dough with a low volume. That's why you need to know you have to control salt in breads. Sugar provides food for the yeast and is essential to the rising process. Ta-da! It also adds taste and color to the crust. Sugar also tenderizes and competes with starch for water. Water, which is your liquid, you have to add water, such as food, vegetables. I'm just going to go through this quickly. It mixes with the flour to dissolve the yeast and helps combine the ingredients to make a stretchy, elastic dough. Measure carefully and use liquids at a lukewarm temperature. And pour it slowly into it. Don't pour it too fast, and don't make it too hot. As here it says, if the liquid is too hot, it will speed the rising process too much and may kill the yeast. You do not want to kill the yeast. Know the temperatures from where the yeast temperature should start and where it should end. So you have to measure the temperature. Use a thermometer until you actually get that part down. I can't remember the exact values or the exact Fahrenheit at which the yeast is. Honestly, I'll have to look that up and obviously see if I can put it in this video as a little side note. But I'm pretty sure it can't be colder than 80 degrees or 90 degrees. And actually, I take that back. It can't be colder than 102 degrees, and it can't be hotter than 132 degrees Fahrenheit. If so, over would kill it, under it wouldn't activate it. Milk, fruit or vegetable juice, soy milk, and rice milk can be substituted in equal amounts for people who are lactose intolerant or have milk allergy. Skim, low-fat, and whole milk can be used interchangeably in some recipes. Eggs can improve the flavor and texture of bread. Nuts and fruits. Some bread recipes call for fruit and nuts after the dough has been kneaded for some time, and nuts and fruit near the end of the second knead cycle. And yes, you do have to knead it twice. Let's see if I have any extra. Oh, straight dough. Know how to do straight dough. Place the warm liquid in a bowl, add the remaining ingredients, mix the dough until it starts to catch, knead the dough until it's smooth and springy, remove the dough to an oiled bowl, let it rise, punch it down, and move it to a floured workbench. You can just go through that, just have a pretty good idea of the steps. Cakes and cookies. Okay, you know what I think I'm going to do? I'm going to, actually, I got some time. Let's see how many more pages we have. We have a couple more. Okay, wow. That's quite a bit of information. Okay, well, we can do it. Cakes and cookies, shortened cakes, pound cake, no added leavening. Steam is used in a pound cake. Close and compact but tender, should not be heavy or soggy. So cakes is going to be bigger than the cookies. You can kind of forget about the cookies. She's not going to cover that much. So know your cakes. Know that you can use, basically this is leavened with steam. So there is no chemical added leavening, but steam is your leavening agent, your biological leavening agent. She won't use biological, but it is a biological leavening agent. Your standard shortened cake, leavened by carbon dioxide, fine grain, cells of uniform size, elastic crumb. See, look again. There it is, leavened by carbon dioxide. This one's leavened by steam. Ingredients: sugar, sweetness, interfering agent, structure, gelatinization, viscosity, effective at adding more sugar. Know the term gelatinization. Everywhere I say gelatinization, she's going to want you to know that. Some of the key words, especially here, are anything with gelatinization, sugar. Types of sugar is a big thing. Know what eggs do. Fats, a lot of those, because that greatly affects your baking when it comes to breads. We have your fat, baking powder, flour, too little, too much, liquid. Just have a good idea of this. We have chocolate cake. You can look through that. Mixing, conventional method, cream, fat, and sugar, add egg, add dry, and this is basically just know your proportions. Like, what's going to happen is, like, in comparison to a lot of these, like muffin method versus etc., you're going to maybe mix one in one bowl. Let's see, I think it's your quick mix method. Yeah, one bowl you'll mix maybe like dry ingredients, and then in the other bowl you'll mix your liquid ingredients, and then you'll pour your liquid into your solid ingredients. So as to, in each method, what it'll do is it'll change the dough. So you're just looking for the best method, and they'll tell you what the best method is when you're cooking it. So you can even test it out if you'd like to. But just know these fairly well. Then we have manipulation, texture, how it's affected, under and over manipulation, preparation of pans, know how to do that. This is all basic. You need to know this when you go into the lab. Angel food is porous and spongy. Ingredients, this is how you make it, mixing, Just basics right here. Sponge cake ingredients: use whole egg, lemon juice, all Cookies types: rolled, dropped, bar, pressed, molded, icebox, refrigerated ingredients. Okay, cool. Cake making tips. We're gonna do this quickly. I only have 3 minutes left. Cakes are grounded in 3 classes: with shortening, such as conventional and quick mix cakes; without shortening, such as angel and sponge cakes; combination angel and shortening types, such as chiffon cake. Just have a good idea. Double acting baking powder, substitute 1 flour for others. The following formula: 1 cup minus 2 tablespoons sifted all-purpose flour equals 1 cup sifted cake flour. Know your proportions. Know your conversions. For example, like 3 teaspoons equals 1 tablespoon. You have to know basics like that in the kitchen. She will definitely test you on proportions. Definitely make sure you know your proportions. That'll make up most of your test. Don't use butter. Know stuff like what you do not need to know. Know your room temperatures. Know. When adding dry ingredients, alternately with liquid, begin and end with dry ingredients. Okay, so you guys just need to have a very good idea of this. Problems with finished cakes, 2 minutes. Problems with finished cakes: coarse texture, insufficient creaming, oven too low. So these are basically problems you will have or will not have, but if you do somehow come into them, which most of us do, we might have a problem. Maybe the texture is too coarse, it's heavy, too compact of a texture, etc., etc. This page, literally, and I'll just go through it slowly, is basically a page where it'll teach you, well, this kind of tells you what you did wrong to achieve that, so then you can try to find a reverse solution, and then you go into ingredients. So yes, we still have a minute on the clock. What I might do is I'll end it here, and we'll pick up in the next video. So I'll see you in the next video. Bye, guys.